This 1974 Beetle behind me here has got no thermostat on the engine, so let's put that right, shall we? There are differing schools of thought and opinions as to whether or not the Volkswagen BEETLE engine needs a thermostat. Well, the most important opinion on my part is the one of Volkswagen themselves. They installed the thing, and this car was built to a price, and they're not going to install something that isn't needed. And if the car never warms up properly, which it doesn't without the thermostat, then you're going to wear parts prematurely and stuff like that, okay? And besides that, I also want to install heaters in this car, which I'll be doing in a separate video. But if you want the heaters to work properly, you also need the thermostat, because the engine won't get up to temperature again. Now, what we're going to do in this case is we're going to install it with the engine in the car. It's an awful lot easier to install the thermostat while the engine's out of the car because it's much easier to get the tin wear off. But that being said, it's a pain in the face dropping the engine to do that job. So it can be done in the car, it's just a bit of a faff, as are most jobs when it comes to working on a Beetle engine with the engine in the car. Being that my engine is a twin carb engine, things are going to be a little bit different than it might be on your Beetle if you have a single carb. Unfortunately, you're going to have to take the carburetor off if you're doing this on a single carb engine because it's going to be in the way. But in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to leave the carbs on and alone, and we're going to take the alternator belt off first. Obviously, you don't need a ramp to do this. I'm just using the ramp because it's saving my back and I have it, so I'll use it. I'll be changing the alternator belt in this because the shims are all on the wrong side now at this stage, so that one is it's gotten too long. So I'll just leave the alternator like that for the moment. Now I'm going to take off the breather hoses here, get them out of our way, and we have to disconnect our ignition coil as well, and we have to take our accelerator cable out. Next thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery because we are going to be disconnecting the alternator and you do not want those wires to short out. Okay, with the battery disconnected, we are going to undo our 10mm nut on the top of the alternator. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting any fasteners back onto the respective points, and there is a screw there for our grounding point on the alternator as well. Okay, put that back in. Alternator is now electrically disconnected. It's picking up a little bit on the fan shroud. I'll see if I can adjust that while it's off. So I'm just going to cut that cable tie and get this pipe out of our way. So I'm going to disconnect the HT leads here as well, and while I'm doing that I'm going to mark them just so we know exactly where they go back on, because I'm going to take the distributor cap off as well. So what I do is I like to mark them like dice. So 4. The 4 is back left of the car, and 3 is front left, and then 2 is front right, and then 2 is back right, and then 1 is front right. Okay, so just to get the HT leads out of our way altogether, I'm just going to take the distributor cap off. Now, that's that out of our way. Okay, and lastly we are going to disconnect our ignition coil. I've taken a photo of the connections on it, and that's all that wiring out of the way. So now, last thing to do, I think, is to disconnect the accelerator cable, and I'm really hoping we don't have to disturb the carb linkage, because that would upset me greatly. I don't want to touch the carbs because this engine is running so well now. Ben Lawrence did an amazing job on this car to get it running the way it is, and I certainly don't want to disturb the work he's done. So anyway, right, yeah, let's get that accelerator cable out. I'm just going to put the barrel clip back onto the accelerator cable. Well, actually there's no point in doing that, is there, because I have to take the cable out. Yeah, we'll take that off. Alright, so now I can take out our accelerator cable guide tube, if it will come out for me. There we go. There we are. Now, so that's the accelerator cable guide tube. This is a part I actually only replaced recently because the old one was fretted and the end was gone off it as a result. So this one is, yeah, it made a big difference actually to how well the accelerator cable actually operated. So right, that's that, and yeah, we will have to pull our accelerator cable out of there. I'll go around you guys and reach my hand down the back of the fan shroud. Now, I might just wait until, let's see if I can reach it, man. Yeah, there it is. Alright, okay, so that's the accelerator cable out. Now I need to take off the generator retaining strap, which is on the back there, and is a 13mm nut by the looks of things. Now you only need to loosen it enough to slide it forward. When I say forward, by the way, I mean forward of the car. Just so that there's no confusion on that. Alright, so now that is the generator disconnected, and we're going to have to take off our engine lid, unfortunately, which is something I didn't really want to have to do, but it does have to be done. So first thing to do, disconnect the number plate light. So cut those cable ties off, and then we can disconnect that, and again, just take photos of any wiring connections and that. It'll just make it so much easier for you when it comes to actually reassembling. And then we can take out our, well, we'll loosen off those 4 bolts. We have to take off our spring, which is great fun to get back on, I can tell you. And then we will we'll have to loosen off the actual deck lid hinges as well, because well, the fixed points of the hinges that are mounted to the car, and then that will allow this all to come off and allow us to lift up our fan shroud. Okay, so there's the deck lid and the brackets out of the way. So now what we need to do is undo. There are 2 bolts, one on either side here. On my car they're cap head bolts, but they might not be on yours. Now I'm going to actually undo the linkage on either side of it. A car like that, they just clip back on, so I might have to make a sawn off Allen key. Oh, here, that's what I'll do. I'll go and modify an Allen key, not one of my good ones though. One sawn off Allen key. This will get in there. Alright, so basically you just need to back them out, and the hole is slotted so they don't have to come out all the way, just far enough so that you can lift up the fan shroud. Okay, now it's just a case of getting the fan shroud to come up. Bearing in mind that you have to wait to the alternator and the fan and everything on it as well. It's a bit of a heavy lumping thing. I'll end up lowering the lift down a bit actually for this. Alright, so now that should give me a better angle of approach. Now bearing in mind as well, we are also lifting, we have to lift the fan shroud up off the oil cooler here too, so the oil cooler's down the back. And make sure you don't snag anything that you don't want to be snagging. Jeez, I'm just noticing the linkage for the flaps is all falling apart in here, so I definitely have to take it off. God almighty. I'll show you now. I just want to get the bleeding off. Now what the hell's holding the bleeding here? There we go. Jeez. I lock wired the flaps open to the crankcase. That's what was holding it, holding it down. The lock wire. So I'll cut that. Not my finest hour. There we go. Now, there we are. One fan shroud removed. Alright, so now let's have a look at what we're dealing with here. So, Apart from anything else, that rod has come off. So we need to address that. And that is also fouling on that. So that should be up there like that. So. And that. Okay, so I've spent a bit of time off camera here just floating around with these, trying to get them to operate correctly. Because this is an aftermarket fan shroud, stuff just doesn't seem to fit as well. I know when I was actually fitting the flaps in the first instance, I had to actually drill holes to screw them in because there was no provision for the flaps at all. Now, running the engine without any flaps in it is a terrible idea because even when they're wide open, they direct the air to the correct places in the engine. So now that these are actually installed correctly and are operating, they should really do the job well. And you can see here, I kind of made up these little things. I don't have any circlips for them. I mean, they're kind of a weird little circlip anyway. But these will do. That's not going to go anywhere. Like, that can't come off. So, yeah, it'll work. And I also have the rod installed here for the cooling flaps to operate, and the thermostat screws onto the other end of that. So now all that's left to do is to actually reinstall the flaps. You'll see here, actually, by the way, as well, that I've installed a spring, and the spring is supposed to go into a hole that would be there, but that hole wasn't there, so I had to drill it. And yeah, so let's reinstall the fan shroud. It makes good sense at this point to just inspect everything and make sure that it's all clean down here. Like, you can often get things like foam or rubbish or whatever down in on top of the cylinders and the fins, and it'll cause your engine to overheat. So just make sure that all of that's free. And if it's not, get the car outside and give it a good pressure wash and get all that crap out of there. Because the great thing about Volkswagen engines is they have this inbuilt rust prevention system, and so far as they leak oil all the damn time. I've never seen a Volkswagen Beetle engine that doesn't piss oil the whole time. So anyway, right, look, let's get the fan shroud reinstalled, and yeah, it's going to be a little bit finicky because we have to try and guide the discharge from the oil cooler down there. Now, if your fan shroud doesn't have that discharge for the oil cooler and is discharging into the engine bay, it's another surefire way of cooking your engine, because all that's happening is it's just recirculating all the hot air that comes out of the oil cooler. You may as well not have the oil cooler at all at that rate. So now, this has to go into this hole. Right, wish me luck. We also have to make sure we don't snag the accelerator cable. And the rod goes down a hole in the middle of the... hang on a second, how am I going to do this? The rod for the thermostat goes down a hole in the middle of the cylinder head. Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and actually take the oil cooler discharge off and put it back on when the fan shroud is actually in. I think it's the only way for it now. Okay, I've got my young lad helping me here now. And we're going to put the fan shroud into place. Now just stand back on. Up on it. Again, I can see one of the problems.
Oh, yeah. It'll fit though.
It will fit. Oh.
Yeah.
Now. Okay, let's try again. Alright, I saved you the bother of watching me putting that bit on in the back. You can do it, it's just a bit awkward to be honest with you. But just remember that it's the bottom piece has to go on first and then the side piece. So anyway, it's back in and we're the oil cooler, or the fan shroud is in position. So now I can tighten up the two bolts. I did replace them with hex heads because those the other setup was a pain in the butt. So we shall actually I'm just thinking, see, what I want to do is one of the things I did was I actually marked the back of the flaps, the rod on one of the flaps, and that actually, and I marked the fan shroud O and C for open and close, so you can actually get a visual indication as to whether the flaps are open or not. So without having to look under the car. Alright, so now there's a little hole there on the on that piece of tinware, and you can actually see it just says open and close, which is nice. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do up these two bolts on either side, the two bolts on either side with a 10mm and a 13mm spanner, and then we're going to just basically make sure that there's free operation of the flaps and that they're working correctly and everything, and then we can start getting everything put back together again, and then we will install our thermostat. Alright, so that's that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go reach underneath the car with the pliers and just grab hold of the rod and see if they are free to move. Fine. Okay, so now let's continue on. We're going to get the accelerator cable in next. We can do this underneath the car if we need to, but like all you do is just pull the guide tube out that goes over the gearbox, push that through, and then push the accelerator cable through. Actually, it's on the ramp. Why the hell don't I just do that? Anyway, look, we'll leave that for the moment. I'm going to just get the generator connected back up and get it back onto its pedestal. So. Alright, that's the generator back on. Now, I know it's dragging, but once you put the belt on, that'll kind of pull everything forwards. So, we'll see how it is once the belt is on. If we need to make adjustments, we will. Okay, everything is back on the engine, bar the accelerator cable and obviously the engine lid. And you'll see I removed the kind of caps that were in there because I'm going to be using them now as well. That's going to be the next job on the list. Okay, so now that the rod is in, which is there, the problem I'm having now is that if you look right up inside where the head, in between the fins on the head, you can see that the casting is actually quite rough in there. And the problem is it's not allowing for free movement of the actual rod. So you can see here, I mean, it's moving, but it's getting caught. So what I need to do now is I need to try and file that somehow. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. See, the problem is, in my ownership, this car's never had a thermostat on it. So this is actually, there's a lot of things like this that we have to try and kind of put right in order to reinstate that piece. Okay, so now I have that all cleaned out. The rod is moving freely there now. Flaps are opening and closing. So now we're going to put the thermostat on. And that's this little lad here. Now I've tested it beforehand already, so it definitely works. So we just thread it onto the rod. And what I've done as well is the hole where the bracket goes onto in the engine, in the crankcase, I have I've tapped that as well. So now what we need to do now is, let's see. We'll offer up our bracket now and see how we're looking. Right. Right, so I think what we need to do now is thread that on all the way. Alright. There's a flat as well in the bottom of the bracket so that it just stops the thing from rotating. So we'll put that bracket onto the actual thermostat. There's a piece of tinware missing off this engine I'm also going to have to source as well, and that's the one that goes below this piece of, below the thermostat. So what I want to do now is pull the thermostat down, and while it's pulled down, you should be able to bolt that into place there now. And we need to make sure our flaps are closed as well. Alright, so I'm just going to bolt this on, and then when it's time to tighten it, you just pull the whole operation down, which keeps the flaps closed because the thermostat's obviously closed at the moment because the engine's cold. And now we can tighten that. And there may be an element of trial and error in this just to make sure that it is actually all as it should be. And that bolt is going into a magnesium crankcase, so do not stitch it. Alright, so by rights now the thermostat should be actually, or the flaps should be closed. So let's just drop the car down a little bit and have a look and see. And because I drilled a little hole there and we have the marking, I now know those flaps are closed. Happy days. So that means the thermostat is in and will do its job. Brilliant! Last thing to do is to put the deck lid on and to put the accelerator cable in. I'm going to do that off camera, but the other thing as well we need to do is we need to get that piece of tinware in place that goes underneath the thermostat, because if it's not there, what happens is the air won't go around the thermostat and actually heat it up and cause it to open. So you could actually overheat the engine just with that one piece of tinware missing. Alright, I think it's fair to say the thermostat is now installed. I just made up a little temporary piece until I can get get the proper piece of tinware, but it'll do the job for the moment. You know, knowing myself, I'll probably actually end up just leaving it there. But the heat exchangers that I'm going to be putting on in the next video have little tabs on them that attach to these pieces of tin as well, so that will stop it from flopping around like a mad thing there. And also, like, if you look there, the holes are, it's just corrosion got to them, to be honest with you. So in reality, what I could do is probably fix them with some JB Weld or something like that and put some studs in them. So I might well go down that route as well. But for the moment, I'm calling that a win. So go and have a look at your Volkswagen Beetle and see if it has a thermostat in it. If it doesn't have a thermostat in it, fit one. Put one in, because Volkswagen themselves thought it was a good idea to have it. And I know there's conflicting opinions about it and all that as well. I'm just thinking to myself, why wouldn't you have it in? Now, the best one I've heard is people saying, oh, well, it's another point of failure. But you could say that about anything, to be honest with you. So, no, I don't buy into that. But, yeah, anyway, look, thermostat's in and connected up and everything like that as well. So, job's a good one. Thanks very much for watching. Please do hit the subscribe button before you go. Plenty of jobs to be done on this car and my other cars in the fleet as well. And we do need to get this bundle of joy behind me finished at some stage as well. So, please stay tuned and I'll see you soon.